It finally happened. At AEW Grand Slam 2023, Sammy Guevara shocked the world and turned on Chris Jericho. Sammy and Jericho have been aligned since the beginning of Dynamite. This is years in the making. But now that they finally pulled the trigger, what does this mean? What is next for Sammy Guevara? So let's break this down. Before we get into the speculation, let's go into what we already know. And that is that Sammy Guevara is seemingly aligned with Don Callis. Callis would come out after Sammy turned on Jericho and they would leave together. This will all be revealed at Rampage at the time of this recording. I do not know what happened at Rampage. I haven't looked at the spoilers and the show hasn't aired yet. But I think it's safe to say that Sammy Guevara is joining the Don Callis family, and that's a pretty big move. What does this mean for Sammy? Well, for one, it may mean that he may not go to the main event scene, as Takeshita is the main eventer of the Don Callis family, and typically you don't really have two main eventers in a stable. This obviously might not be the case, because you have Hangman and Kenny in the lead. You have Danielson and Moxley in the Blackpool Combat Club. But you have to assume for the Don Callis family that Takeshita is the main guy. He was the first, he's beaten Omega, and while Sammy will probably get a main event-esque push, it doesn't seem like a world title is in his grasp anytime soon, as you'd have to assume if a Don Callis family member were to win a world title, it would be Konosuke Takeshita. But then what does that mean for Sammy? What will Sammy do? Well, there's two obvious feuds that will happen after this. The first one, of course, is Chris Jericho. Now, Jericho won in their first encounter, but you have to assume that considering Sammy's the younger talent, Sammy has more upside for the future, that this means Sammy Guevara will get some big victories over Chris Jericho, whether it be one or two in a rubber match, we don't know, but you have to assume that Sammy Guevara is going to beat Chris Jericho, and if he does, then that makes the Don Callis family so much stronger, because beating Jericho in a big feud, in my opinion, is still a big deal in 2023. They push him as a top guy. He was their first world champion and would be the biggest win of Sammy Guevara's career. Now the other feud, the other go-to feud is Daniel Garcia. Garcia confronted Sammy after this, and to me this is a great feud. They have the history, of course, but also this is a very good position for Daniel Garcia to be in after leaving the Jericho Appreciation Society, where since then, other than trending over his dance, he hasn't really done much. So this will be one of the biggest positions that Garcia has been in a while, arguably since the I am a professional wrestler days of Daniel Garcia's career. This is the most emotional stake that Garcia has had, and to see a more serious side of Daniel Garcia would be great to see, because I think he's a hell of a talent. And to see Sammy and Garcia go at it, while you'd assume that Sammy would win, it's still a very compelling feud for Garcia to be a part of. Garcia is one of AEW's stronger prospects, so feuding with one of AEW's main heel staples in the Don Callis family would be a great position, and it would also be a great position for Sammy. Sammy feuding with Garcia, one of the most likable characters on AEW television, and then beating one of the biggest stars they have in Chris Jericho, one of the most recognizable names in the business. Now that we've established the immediate future of Sammy Guevara following his heel turn on Chris Jericho, let's talk about what Sammy Guevara could do long term. As I've established, I do believe that Konosuke Takeshita will be the main eventer, the world title contender of the Don Callis family. And if that's the case, other than maybe a short feud with MJF or maybe a one-off television match, I don't think Sammy Guevara is going to be in that contention. I do think, however, that following a Jericho feud, he could be perfect in the international title scene, which I don't consider to be mid-card like the TNT, so it wouldn't really be a step down. I consider the title to be kind of upper mid-card because you have names like Moxley and OC in the lineage. So I do think that this would be a great move for Sammy Guevara, and considering that this will be months in the future, considering the Jericho feud is probably going to last long, and a feud with Rey Fenix will probably last a month or two. You can have a mini feud with Pentagon during that, have the Lucha Bros versus Takeshita and Sammy. There's a lot you can do with this feud that can drag it out until Sammy Guevara can eventually win the International Championship. In conclusion, I do believe that this is the right move for Sammy Guevara. You could argue that this is the wrong move because he just announced that he's having a child, so maybe you shouldn't turn him heel when he's about to have his first child, which is a pretty babyface story. But when you look at everything I've mentioned today, when you look at the fact that he could have great feuds with Jericho and Garcia, when you look at the fact that he's joining the Don Callis family, which has a lot of momentum right now, and even the potential of Sammy Guevara being the international champion, I think there's a lot of upside to Sammy Guevara as a heel.